All right. Well, welcome to the ROTI Hour workshop. If you are just joining us, you're here live. I know that, we don't want summer to be all work and no play. So I would love to hear what's one thing outside of business that you're intentionally making time for this summer. Drop that in the chat as a way to say hello. And then while you're there, you can grab the link to the worksheet, redeemhertime.com/ROTI worksheet is what we're going to be working through today. So you'll want to have that in front of you if you can. And today we're going to be addressing something that I believe is one of the biggest reasons why so many people work really hard and long in their business, whether it's summer or not, but still feel like you're not creating the momentum that you want. And no, it's not because you're lazy or because you don't care or because you need another strategy or another platform, right? What it really comes down to is time. It's because you're not spending time and you're not spending time without intentionally investing it where it's going to create the greatest return for that time that you put in. And I don't know about you, but when I sit down to work, I want to make sure that what I'm doing is actually going to move the needle and not just feel like, what did I get done today? So we're going to start solving that problem today. I can't promise that we're going to get to the final fix for it, but I'm going to help you see things from a little bit different perspective today and start implementing a strategy that's going to help you in that. Before we do that, I want to set some expectations. This is not a productivity workshop. Okay, when you're thinking about, okay, how do I get more done? That's not what we're talking about. Okay, this is not a marketing workshop, and it's definitely not a workshop about how to squeeze more into your already busy schedule because you're busy. And chances are, in a season like summer, you're like, how can I not be in my office as often? Which is why I asked you to drop in the chat. What's one thing you want to make time for outside of work? This really is a time stewardship workshop. And when you hang around in my world, everything comes down to that, right? We say all these things that I don't have time, and if I had time, and I'm spending all this time doing this, but we really have to slow down and look at the fact that our time is two really key things. Number one, it's sacred. It's a gift from God every day to do what He's called us to do. And it's strategic, right? Where we invest our time or where we don't will have a direct impact on where that thing ends up or where it doesn't. And so that doesn't mean that we get stressed out about it. That actually means we slow down and pause and make some really intentional CEO decisions. We'll be talking about that today because I don't know about you guys, my goal is not just to be more productive, right? How many have been on the productivity train, right? You're like, if I could just be more productive, then I would feel better. My business would grow. I wouldn't be thinking about it all the time. And actually, I find it just kind of feeds the monster in our heads and just keeps us going and things like that, right? So our goal today is to faithfully steward what God has entrusted to us, whether it's our gifts, our opportunities, our relationships, our calling, our business, and yes, of course, our time. And so by the end of our time today, I want you to be really clear about what result you're building over the next 12 weeks, where your momentum is leaking, what activities will start creating momentum and leading to a better return on your time, and then how to build out your own ROTI hour and protect it so that's happening consistently. And you're going to walk away from here today knowing exactly what you're going to do tomorrow or even yet today to start moving things forward. Okay? Because I don't want you just to leave here inspired. I want you to leave here with making some CEO decisions, having a plan, and some momentum. Okay? So that's where we're headed. I think a lot of people are here. If you haven't yet, let me drop the worksheet link in the chat one more time so you can have that pulled up or printed off if you are able to. So I would love to start with a quick poll. So let me drop this in the chat because sometimes it's easier to see it than just hear it. Let me drop that in there. Okay, when it comes to your business, which of these feels most true right now? A, I'm busy all day, but I don't feel like I'm moving forward. B, I know what I should do, but I'm not consistently doing it. C, everything feels important. So when I sit down, I don't know which direction to go. D, girl, all the above. Lisa, can you wave the magic wand? Can we do all of this? Maybe there's one that stands out, or maybe you're like, no, I feel like everything is kind of right there. Got some B's, C's, D's. Okay. I always love seeing patterns and noticing. And here's the thing, as you look at those things, right? Most women, our struggles are around either not making time for something consistently and then protecting it. That's one piece of it. Or when we do make time, not focusing that time on what really moves the needle, right? So if you're in one of those two places or all the above, you're in the right place because that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you identify what belongs in 1 hour a day so that you will protect time for it, right? Because when you know something matters and it's actually going to help you grow, you will make sure that you make time for it. And we want to make sure that when you do sit down to do that, you're actually creating a good ROTI, a good return. Okay, so go ahead and pull out that worksheet or pull it up. Hold on, I have the poll still in my thing. So, do you mind, Kathy, dropping the chat to the worksheet whenever somebody new jumps in, and that way I don't have to go back and find my link somewhere, and we can kind of keep going. Managing distractions is my issue. Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about that. I just had a great conversation with a client earlier today, and she literally had three-ring circus going on around her. It was kind of comical how many things were distracting her while we were together. And so it just gave us a great opportunity to think about number one, we have to decide what matters. That's always the first place to go, Jennifer, right? Like what matters and why does it matter? Because then we're able to recognize those things that are distracting our attention from that and hopefully be more preventative around those things versus reactive. Okay. All right. So, what we want to do is we want to start with really where is it that you want to go this summer? Because I think your bigger vision, your CEO vision is always what's going to shape where we spend our time or where we don't. So at the top of page one it says, before we begin, what is one result that you want to create in the next 12 weeks? Now, I always love thinking in 12-week focus cycles. Don't feel like it has to be exactly, okay, calculate what's 12 weeks from today. Okay, we're just talking like the next 12 weeks-ish. So that kind of like from now till probably Labor Day is about where we'll be in 12 weeks, specifically around moving your business forward. I know there are probably a lot of other things that you might like to get done around the house this summer, but I want us to come in with this one thing in mind. What is one result that you really want to create in the next 12 weeks to move your business forward? Not just a task, not just a project or a to-do list. Like really think about a result, but something that's measurable, something that's meaningful, something that would make the next 12 weeks feel really fruitful. Where do you want to be in your business by Labor Day weekend in early September? So, I'll give you some examples. Maybe you want to sign 5 new clients. Maybe you want to launch, a special offer that you've been working on and bring in, 10 people to that. Maybe you want to fill your next workshop with 50 registrants. Maybe you want to grow your community by 30 people. Maybe you want to build 5 strategic partnerships or book yourself on 3 speaking or guesting opportunities. What would be a tangible result that you would love to see by the end of the summer? Maybe it's something you've spent on your heart for a while. God's been nudging you, or maybe it's something new. So just take a minute, write it down. The more specific you can be, the better. And I want to encourage you to then drop it in the chat. I want you to write it down for yourself first, because I want you to have this to go back to. We're going to kind of keep looking back here, but then also drop it in the chat, because I would love to see, what are we building this summer? What are you working towards? What would feel really good? What would be fruit that you are actually moving something forward? So drop that in the chat. Opening a membership with 15 members. I love it, Monique. Assuming around your organizing that you're doing. Filling my mentorship cohort with 4 women. I love when you can put like a specific number on it. And again, we're guessing at that number. That number could be way more than that. It may end up being less than that, but it's giving us something to work towards. 3 builders and sharers going to convention with me. Okay, I love it. Yeah, so as you're thinking and go, okay, and how would I measure this? Right? Like that's where usually there's a number attached to it. It's something very specific and tangible that we actually want to get to the end of the summer and be able to ask the question, did I do this? Not just did I grow, not just did I, I think we sometimes have these pie in the sky, like I call it the get healthy goals, right? What does that even mean? But something really specific that we can measure and look at that's going to be showing the fruit of where we want to be growing. Okay. I love it. Becoming an executive director, which means bringing on 5 to 7 new, I just lost the last part as it was scrolling up there. Clients, okay, and supporting them. Yay. Speaking at a reset this weekend. I love it. 60 people in my Google review program. Okay, I love that. So as you can see, looking at these results, here's what I noticed. Every result represented here in this chat is going to require what? Time. Right? They're not just going to happen. Like this is not just it's just going to, snap my fingers and it's going to be there. So the question probably isn't whether you're going to spend time working towards this summer. The question is whether the time you're spending is actually moving you towards that result or not. Okay? Because there is a difference. And this is why we always want to keep this vision in front of us. So the second question on here is why? Why does that thing that you just wrote down matter right now? Why in this season? And I want you to think about what could change about your business if and when, let's say when, not if, this happened. And I'm going to encourage you Usually the first answer we give is nice, but it's not always the real answer. So like for example, if your first answer is, because I want more clients, then ask yourself that next level of why, like why would that matter? And maybe your answer is because it would bring in more income, right? And then I would say, okay, let's go even deeper. Why would that matter? Because I'd be helping us to have more for, this vacation we want to take this summer, or my kid who's going off to college, or something that I'm, wanting to be able to be more generous, with, to be able to give to. That first answer isn't always the real answer. It's usually that superficial business thing. The deeper ones go to like the freedom, the impact, the confidence, the provision, the finally feeling like what God called you to build is working. So I want you to take a minute and write down what comes to you when you ask why. And I want you to ask yourself that 2 or 3 levels deep. Why would that matter? Kind of see, a lot of times you can then feel it, right? When it is that deeper why versus just the superficial one. And which one do you think is going to keep us going when, like Jennifer said, the distractions come up, right? When the discouragement happens, when the doubt creeps in, it's going to be those deeper ones, not just the surface ones. And I would encourage you, if you're willing, whenever you want to share something in the chat, always open permission to do that. And that not only helps, number one, give you more connection to what you just decided and what you shared, but it also helps other people be a part of that. And we all know that when we start sharing it with more than just ourselves, it leads to, if there's a much, much greater chance of that thing actually happening or putting it out. So why would that thing matter that you said you want to do? Make sure you write it down, drop it in the chat. Get curious about that next level of why. And this may be something that we start today and then you come back to in your CEO meeting with the Lord tomorrow, or even tonight, where you come back to some of this. Because again, if we just jump into the how without the why and the what, it's going to be really easy sometimes to still get distracted as we're doing that. And as you're thinking about that and putting that down there, I want to just kind of like tell you guys a little bit about what's going on in my journey because I thought the answer to building my business was always doing more. I'm a doer, I'm a 1 on the Enneagram. So it was like, okay, how can I do more and how can I do it better? And, like it's like it was never enough, right? It was always another post, another story, another email, another episode, more content, right? And of course, I always had an overflowing inbox and I had never ending notifications that I felt like I had to keep up with. So I was working longer than I wanted to. And I was checking lots of boxes, trying to stay consistent, trying to stay visible, trying to do all the things the experts said I should do. Does anyone relate? But there were a lot of times where all of that work still felt like it wasn't producing anything, like it was still crickets. And there weren't new clients coming in, and there wasn't momentum being built, and the list wasn't growing, and the clients I was serving weren't, expanding. And honestly, along with that, a lot of the questioning, like, am I doing enough? Am I missing something? Like, can I even do this? And I think I just assumed, and I think I had been taught that if people would just see what I was putting out there and naturally respond, but most people didn't. And what was happening along the way is I was just getting burned out, right? So my business was getting all this energy, and then everybody else was getting the leftovers. And of course, I was on the back burner. Anybody else do that as well? Where it's like all of this effort goes into this, and then there's not a whole lot left for the things that really matter and that matter long term. And the problem wasn't that I was lacking time. I was really lacking intentionality with my time. Because if you told me that I should do it, I just add it to my already full plate. And I just figured out I just had to just keep going until I eventually one day got there. But what I learned was it wasn't just about what did I get done today? We're going to talk about this in just a minute, but what's actually moving this forward? And really slowing down to ask that question first before just jumping into all the things that I thought that I had to do. And so I just want to encourage you, like, if you've put a lot of time in, you may be at a really great place in your business and feel like I am rocking and rolling and this is great and I'm ready for a next level. And so a next level doesn't have to involve more time, right? I think it involves really being more intentional about what's going to propel things to that next level and what's going to sustain that as well. And so I think so often, right, we are confusing faithfulness with busyness. And you'll hear me say a lot if you hang around me that busyness is not the same thing as fruitfulness. And I think this is why so many Christian women get frustrated because we're being faithful, showing up, working hard, but not really seeing the fruit. So maybe the issue isn't your time. Maybe it's where all that time is being distracted. So let's look at the momentum gap Okay, so we're on the next part of the worksheet there. If you're like me, you have a goal, you have a why, but maybe you're not seeing the results. Let's look at maybe why some of that is not happening. Because most of us don't wake up to one day and say, today I think I'd like to avoid creating momentum, right? But sometimes somehow we end up there, especially in a season like summer when there's so many other things that maybe we'd rather be doing or pulling at our time and attention. So let's kind of start getting curious about why that is. There are going to be a lot of different reasons around it, but why that might be happening and start to identify that momentum gap. So in front of you, I've put some check boxes here because I want you to look through this list and I want you to simply check off anything that regularly steals your attention when you do make time for this business or ministry or thing that God is asking you to move forward. And I just want you to be honest. No shame, no stories, no judgment, just awareness around when I sit down, then where is my time often going? Because that will help us to better see why am I seeing the results that I'm seeing, which can be a good thing, or why am I not? So think about which one maybe distracts my time first, which one takes up the most time overall. As we're doing that, I will grab the link to drop in here for anybody who hasn't gotten the worksheet in front of them. You marked every single one. Okay. Well, and you know what? Sometimes that is the reality, right? And hopefully, even just by reading those, Debbie, that helped you to start recognizing, okay, this is something that's coming up. And wow, when I'm doing this, this probably could be a reason why I'm not creating momentum, right? Because that is taking time away from the things that actually are. And I think here's what happens is so often, I think for most of you, I know like sometimes it's just like life is just busy and sometimes it's just hard to carve out that time to sit down. But I know for the women that I work with who are really committed to their business, it's not that they're not sitting down to spend time in their business. It's also that when they do sit down, they don't know exactly what to do to create significant results. So what do we do when we don't know what to do? We scroll, we research, we organize, we tweak, right? We check the easy boxes. Anybody with me, right? We learn, we consume, we start something new. We turn into what I call a busyness owner, which we'll talk about this in just a minute. And we don't see much in results, right? I mean, tell me this if you can relate to this. Like you sit down intending to follow up with somebody, analysis paralysis. Yes. And yes, sometimes not having a plan means whatever feels like it's important or shiny object syndrome catches my eye, that's what's getting my time and attention. So how many of you have like sat down intending to work on something, but then you check email and you end up in there for 30 minutes to an hour, and then you see something that, over here that you need to respond to, and then you remember a Canva graphic you need to update, and then you wonder if you should tweak that offer, and then you spend 20 minutes scrolling to see what somebody else is doing. Yeah, or Katie, like you get distracted by doubt and we just spend a bunch of time in our heads. And before we know it, that time you set aside, whether it's an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever it is, it's gone. And it's time to move on because it's time for dinner or it's time for that next thing. And sure, you were working. Am I in your head? I hope so. Not in a bad way, but just in a like, I get it. And like, I think this is where we're stuck, right? Because we're working, but we're not actually moving anything forward. And I think sometimes we convince ourselves, like, okay, I am doing something. And I remember back in the day, like my family would see me in my office. They're like, wow, this is spending time in our office. But yeah, there wasn't a whole lot to show for it. And I didn't like that feeling. And that's not to say that any of those things are bad on the back end. Planning's not bad, learning's not bad, organizing's not bad, creating more content isn't bad. But when they become a substitute for what actually creates momentum, that's when there's a problem. And that's where we get to that end of the day or the week and we're like, okay, I worked hard and long, but I don't really feel like I moved anything important forward. And we're like, where did the time go? Right? That's not a productivity problem. That's more of a stewardship problem because the issue isn't really whether we're spending time, it's where are we investing it and why this matters. And yes, sometimes it's easier to stay busy doing all the upfront stuff or all the behind the scenes stuff than actually what's going to move it forward. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's go down to the real cost because, right, the frustration can be like, is this really working? And how can I can't give this any more time and not see results. And I've talked to so many business owners, a couple recently, where they're like, Alyssa, if something doesn't happen by a certain time, I'm going to have to think about what else I'm going to do instead with this time. Right. And so we don't want that happening where we're watching another month go by, get to the end of summer, before we know it, it's going to be the end of the year and it's going to feel like we're still in the same place or maybe backwards in that. So yeah, this is so good, Tanya, like because we have those patterns And our body feels it, and then that affects what we're getting out of our time. Okay, so I want you to get really honest. If nothing changes under the real cost, what will you regret at the end of 12 weeks, the end of summer, kind of as we're heading into fall? If nothing changes about either how much time this thing that you want to move forward is getting, or the consistency of that time, or the focus of that time, what regrets are you going to have? I know this isn't like the fun part we want to look at, but sometimes it's really important to look at that because by not giving focused time to this thing, we will probably be headed in that direction. Not just what's going to annoy you or frustrate you, but maybe what will you regret if you keep letting other things distract your time. So give me a minute to kind of think about how will that feel? And nobody wants to stay there. So then we're going to go to, okay, what's the possibility? What would creating momentum, let's flip it. If I started actually building momentum, what would be possible? What opportunities might open? What would change? How would I show up differently to my business come September 1st if I did actually see this thing happen over the next 12 weeks? And write that down. Yeah. If nothing changes, I will quit trying to make this business a reality. I'm not a quitter. So that would feel really heavy. Yes. And even if it were to come to that point, for whatever reason, there's a lot of reasons why people don't continue with the business. We can't let that be what defines our value, right? And our worth. But when it's something, especially when I work with women, there's really a deeper calling around what we do. It's not just, I went and got a job and I'm punching a time clock and this just felt like, the thing to do. Usually there's a deeper reason. It's often come out of our own story, the thing that we've experienced, the helper, whatever that we needed. And so I think there is this, yeah, where we feel like we've really let someone down or let the Lord down if we're not following through on that because it's coming from a deeper place than just showing up and doing a job. So let's end with a possibility. Thanks for sharing in here. Please keep sharing in here. What would be possible if you were doing that? More confidence in what I'm doing. Okay. I will regret what could have been and a lack of confidence, losing out on helping others and not being obedient. Right. That's exactly what you were reading my mind there, Debbie, as I was saying that. Right. And then flip that on the other side. What is the possibility of that? What would that look like? Right. Having a big impact. And what I love is that what we want to see happen, the possibility doesn't have to require more time. It doesn't mean you have to spend more hours in your office this summer. It just means we want to be more intentional with the hours that we do have. Okay. And this is where we start making the CEO shift. Okay. So if you've been in my world, you've heard this before. If you're new, this may be a first time that you've heard this, but CEOs pay attention to what creates the greatest return on their time. Okay. And there's a difference between a busyness owner and a CEO. So there's a little chart down there at the bottom of page 1. Okay, and I got us started, and we're gonna kind of flesh out what does a business owner versus a CEO look like, because I think this is important that we approach the rest of what we're doing today as a CEO, not a business owner. So I got us started with a business owner asks, what can I get done today? How many of you woke up today saying, what do I need to do today? Right? At the end of the day, you're asking the question, what did I get done today? Not necessarily bad, but it's going to keep us probably in doing and busy mode. A CEO asks, what will move forward today? What am I going to intentionally move forward and invest time in versus just getting things done? Okay, one question creates activity. The other one creates momentum. One is measuring how much you did. The other one is measuring the result, which is your ROTI, the return on that time invested. Okay, there is a big difference in how we approach what it is that we do want to move forward. Okay, so let's get a clear picture of what these two look like. And I'm going to kind of walk you through business owner versus CEO. Okay, so we start off with what can I get done today versus what will I move forward with today. A business owner reacts to urgency, and a CEO responds with intention. Right? They're not just jumping because something came up. The business owner is the reactor, the CEO is the responder. And they're going to take time to pause before they respond, because otherwise that's reacting. A business owner focuses on the tasks. The CEO focuses on the results. The tasks versus the results. Now, will there be tasks that are involved in the results? Yes. But when we're just focused on the tasks, it can be very easy to be blinders on, and I'm over here checking off tasks but not seeing results, I just wasted all that time. The business owner consumes information, whereas the CEO implements information. How often do we find our time is in consumption versus actually implementing and doing something with what we already know? And I think that's one thing I say over and over again. You don't need more information, right? It's the implementation piece. It's not usually, I don't know what to do. It's, I actually need to execute this on a consistent basis if I want to see the results. A business owner chases opportunities. A CEO creates opportunities, right? We're talking squirrel, shiny object versus like, wow, I'm actually looking at what's the opportunity of what's right in front of me. That business owner measures effort. A CEO measures return, right? Not just, again, what am I putting in, but what's coming out, because that's going to determine what I put in. A business owner is waiting for momentum, hoping if I check enough boxes, something will start moving. But a CEO intentionally creates momentum, right? So are you waiting for it or are you creating it? And then the last one, I love this. A business owner fills their calendar. How many of you, like your days are full, right? And our calendar gets filled. We're spending time, but a CEO invests for time. And that doesn't mean that she doesn't have things on her calendar, but those things on her calendar are an intentional investment. And what do you know about investments versus spending? Spend, it's gone. Once it's gone. Investment, I have, and put some time or money into this, but it's in order to bring back a return. Okay. Notice the difference isn't the amount of time a business owner has versus a CEO. The difference is about how you're approaching that time, right? Which is going to lead to what you're doing with that time. And so even if you just start with that very first one, instead of waking up in the morning and saying, what do I need to get done today? Or at the end of the day saying, what did I get done today? Like asking that question, what will I move forward today? Or what did move forward today? And that will help us to start investing our time where it's actually going to make a difference. Because a CEO understands that not all activities create equal return. Not all activities create equal return, right? And here's where we have to pay attention to what is going to move this thing forward, not just what feels like I'm being productive, but isn't really producing anything. So I want you, before we move on, I want you to star one characteristic that describes how you want to show up this summer as a CEO. What was one of those things that we just talked about? Maybe it's just the question at the very top, right? That would be a great question. If you just simply shifted and asked that question, we could even take it back to one of the ones you hear me talk about all the time. A business owner would ask, what time is it? Right? And then their hustle hurry to try to catch up with where they think they should be versus a CEO that says, what is it time for? And slows down to the presence of their time and the purpose of their time. So what is one way that you want to commit to showing up as a CEO this summer? Why don't you start for yourself? And then I would love for you to drop that in the chat. What is one that really stood out to you that you're like, this is one that I know if I started showing up more like this versus this, I would see and feel a difference when it comes to my time and the results of my time. Carly, I can totally understand. I had to train my husband at one point, please don't ask me what I got done today. You're right, because they want to know what you got done, which is, hard to answer. So what I said is ask me, hey, what did you focus on today? What mattered today? Right? So sometimes it's retraining ourselves. Sometimes it's retraining the people around us. So I just find that's very interesting that, yeah, you were struggling with that as well. I love it. Responding to urgency instead of reacting. Yeah. How can I be a responder? Think about a first responder, right? Their job is to, in the moment, right, be a responder, but they're not, running around like the person that, is being thrown off by whatever emergency just came up. They've got presence of mind because they know what matters and they know what their job is, and they're there to do that. So yeah, they're assessing first, right? Yeah, triage probably happening. Investing my time, not filling my calendar. Gosh, right? How important would that just one little shift be? When I do spend my time in this way, is it going to bring some kind of a return? Right? Again, we can waste time, we can spend time, we can invest time, just like we can waste money, we can spend money, we can invest money, but the outcome is always different. And so stopping to ask that question as you're planning out your week, as you're planning out the next day, where is this going? Implementing what I know versus, yes, learning more. I think we think oh, I need this next thing. And what if we actually already know quite a bit to at least get to the next level, right? It may not get us everywhere we want to be, but at least gets us to that next place. So as you're thinking about that, and as we're wrapping up this page, it's been really fun. I reached out to some people over the past couple of weeks as I've been prepping for this and having some conversations with some of you who are here. Several people told me they know they need to have more focused time to invest in their business and that it takes more than just a plan, right? It takes having accountability, especially because life is going to be happen and we're going to tend to react to those things if we don't have some other things in place. And so one of the things I'll be doing today as we're talking through this plan, it's not just what are we doing today while we're here, but how do we actually follow through on this? Not just tomorrow, because I'm going to give you an assignment to do tomorrow. How do we follow through on Friday? How do we follow through next week? And halfway through July and at the end of August, it's going to have not only a plan, but it's going to be having a way to be held accountable. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping Christian women business owners to create what I call CEO focus, because oftentimes we know what we need to do. We know what we want. We have good ideas. We have good intentions. But then every week feels like it's the three-ring circus, right? And yeah, follow through can be our biggest struggle. And that's what's actually going to create the results is when we do that. Okay. So I will be inviting those of you who want to not just know what to do, but actually like have support around executing it to check out CEO Focus and to come and look at, okay, how do we build in weekly accountability and coaching and a community that helps us to not only value these things that God's called us to, but then to invest the time in it. I'll be sharing more about that as we go. Okay. But before we move on, I want you to notice something really important. Right now, if you are here, you probably don't have a motivation problem. And even though you may think this is not the case, here's what I want to say. You ready for this? You likely don't actually have a time problem. Okay? Because more time is probably not going to fix this, right? You actually have a stewardship problem because you've been investing the time you do have, or in your head thinking, I don't have time, and then missing out on the time that is right in front of you. You've been investing it in things that just aren't actually moving the needle forward. And so we're going to start asking the question, how do I move down the momentum pathway? What does that actually look like? Yeah, it's a stewardship thing. And when we understand stewardship, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that, but I will kind of bring this up a minute. Stewardship is all about there's this intentionality because we understand as a steward, it doesn't belong to us. It's been entrusted to us. And my job is to invest it on behalf of the owner in order to expand their assets according to their purposes. So as believers, right, our time is not our own, our bodies are not our own, our homes, our businesses, all of these things. So when we're just running around like someone who's trying to manage things, AKA keep it contained and under control, putting out fires all day long, right? Like we may keep things from blowing away, but we're not actually producing kingdom type fruit. So when we start showing up as stewards, here's where it motivates a healthy sense of productivity, but it's coming from this deeper sense of, of this calling that we've been given. Okay. All right. Yeah, no worries if you need to go. I will be sending the replay to everyone who is here. And also there are some extra special things that everybody who, just so you guys know, everyone who registered is being invited to our next ROTI co-working hour, which is next Wednesday at 10 o'clock Central Time. So I'll make sure that I put information about that in the emails that you'll get after this, as I want you to not just have a great idea today. I want you to have a way to actually start implementing what it is that you know is going to make the difference. Okay, so we've identified something we want to create some momentum around. We started to look at what's maybe one thing that's maybe getting in the way, the cost if nothing changes, what's possible if we actually do intentionally invest the time we have. And the question then next is, okay, so then Lissa, why maybe don't I have momentum right now? Okay, and what is it? If I'm not just looking to get more done, I'm actually looking to move something forward. How do I invest my time such that it is actually doing that? Okay, because if busyness isn't the answer, we want to know like what actually creates momentum, which is what page 2 is all about. So flip on over to page 2. I'll just in case somebody doesn't have it, let me drop that in the chat real quick. And I want to introduce you guys to something I call the momentum pathway. As I started looking back over the years of being in business, I've been in some iteration of my business for the last 12 years. I started looking back at the opportunities I had, clients that came in, referrals, collaborations, interviews, speaking opportunities, connections. And you know what? I noticed a pattern. Almost all of them followed the same pathway. And guess what? It wasn't just more content. I hate to admit this. Some of you have heard this before. When I first started my business, again, didn't know what I didn't know. So I went and found some guru who sounded like they knew that they knew more than I did. And I was literally posting on Facebook 7 times a day, plus all the story stuff. I know, right? Like I see you're looking at me like, are you crazy? And I mean, that's just think about all the time when I shudder to think about how much time I spent because I thought that was what was going to bring the clients, right? And so what surprised me over the years was whether it was a client or an interview or referral or an opportunity, almost all of them start the same way. You know how that is? Through a relationship. Not every single one, right? Sometimes people randomly find you from something that you put out on the internet, but they all follow this. And this is right here at the top. Most business growth follows a simple pathway: connection, conversation, invitation. Okay. But the problem is so much of the time we spend, right, like just in inboxes or doing, creating more content or, consuming all this stuff. And we're not really giving the kind of time to this that we need to. So I want to talk about what each one of these means and what it might look like for you in your season of business. And what I love about this is it doesn't matter if you are just starting or if you have been doing this for a while and you're seasoned, if you're like at a level that you feel really good about, or you're wanting to get to a level that you feel really good about, like these same three things are exactly where we should be investing time consistently. And when I'm going to teach you on the last page, how to build out your ROTI hour such that these things are getting the attention and time they need. And I guarantee when you are giving these things time and attention, you will see results because it's inevitable when we're doing the things that actually build momentum. So let's dive into these things. Okay, the first one is connection. And we'll talk about how collaboration multiplies all of these together at the end. But connection is simply helping the right people discover you. Okay, not everyone, right? It's not being visible to all the people, right? It's being visible to the people who are right for what you have. So we're not just looking for more followers or more reach or more eyeballs or more subscribers because visibility alone isn't the goal. And I see way too many business owners, I would probably call them busyness owners, who are spending a lot of time trying to be visible, right? Probably through a lot of content. And content is a good thing that it can help lead to connections, but it doesn't always just on its own. Right. So if you fell into my trap, yeah, how overwhelming that I spent so much time doing, like trying to come up with all these ideas and having to document every single day of my life. Right. And thinking that people are magically going to discover me. And like, I think I thought, okay, they're going to not only find this on the internet, they're going to actually have the time to stop and read it, to think about it and to respond. That's putting a lot of things on somebody's, shoulders that probably aren't going to happen. Right. But I want you to think about this. Your last few clients, or the last few people that were doing something with, where did they come from? Whether they're referrals or collaborations or opportunities, how many of them came directly from a piece of content all by itself? How many of them came through some kind of a relationship? Okay, sometimes we have sometimes there's a direct connection where somebody makes a direct connection, but how often is somebody coming up just because you put something out there versus you actually just took the time to make a connection with a human, right? To make a direct connection versus just hoping the internet's going to do that for us. I want you to think about this. What percent of your time gets spent on what I call the posting and praying content versus on truly connecting with people? And I want us to really think about that because if you're noticing that most of your opportunities come through relationships, which unless you have so there is a way to do it where it's all just out there in the world like that through content, but you have to have a high volume for that to happen. But for most of us, and most of the women that I work with, most of our opportunities are coming through relationships. Yes, it may start from content, but then we develop a connection. The reason you're here is probably because you and I developed a connection somewhere along the way, right? And then you'll see how maybe you and I walked through these next two steps. But so many of us are spending most of our time acting like, what we're spending all this time on is the answer, and it's not. And then we wonder why we don't have the results. Okay. And this is really important for us to look at because where you are right now is the consequence, good, bad, or indifferent, of how you have invested time or not up till now, which is actually really good news because if you want this to change, right, then we're just going to shift where we're focusing it. And here's the thing that I want you to hear. People buy from people, right? Unless you're like a brand name like Macy's, right? People will buy from Macy's because it's Macy's or Amazon because it's Amazon, right? But you will stand out if you actually take time to be a person. And no matter how much is going on with AI can be super helpful and it can save us a lot of time, but it can't replace relationships and real connection. right? So remember that content may start the process, but relationships are what moves it forward because that connection is going to create awareness and familiarity and open the door to the next one, which is conversation. So, what is it that is going to be the kind of connection that you need to be focusing time on? I've given you some examples here. It can happen, connection can happen a lot of ways. It can happen from posting valuable content. Yes, that can be a piece of it. Not 7 times a day. Okay. Please, nobody go and do what I did. Okay. Can come from starting collaboration, from guesting, speaking, training, attending a networking event, growing your email list, asking for referrals. Yes, putting out the Substack article, making introductions. When you think about the question, not just how can I create more and hope people find me, but how can I connect with the right people? I want you to, I've given you 3 lines there to put down your highest ROTI connection activities. I want you to think about what connection activities have historically created the most opportunity for you or could create the most opportunity if you actually committed time to it consistently. Not what a guru says, not even maybe what somebody else is doing and says works for them. What has actually worked for you, especially if you think back to where people have come from. And I want you to write down what you think might be your highest ROTI connection activities. Yeah, I love Carly's reminder that relationships is key. The content helps them know who I am after I make the connection, right? Carly and I have just been hanging out in the emails for a while, getting to know each other, which has been really fun back and forth in a whole different way than if it just would have been, here's, an email that went to everybody, right? Or a piece of content that went out. And we spent time emailing back and forth. And I love that, right? That's how we start actually making connections. And I know a lot of things now about Carly. We've gotten on a call because of that. And it all started because she came to a summit that I gave away a planner to. And she was a winner. And so I had to get in contact with her of how to send it to her and kept it going. So, what are your highest ROTI connection activities? And I would love for you to drop 1 or 2 of those in the chat because it may inspire somebody else like, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. We don't want a laundry list of 100 things that we should feel like we should be doing, but what's actually helping you? Debbie was ready. Look at you, Debbie. Growing my email list. Okay, so thinking about, I would even get more specific on that, Debbie. Like, what is a specific way that you can connect with the right people to get them on there? Guest speaking could definitely be one of those, posting valuable content. Yeah. What is actually going to get people connecting with you, not just putting stuff out there and hoping that that's going to happen? And then I want you really thinking about when you look at your connection activities, are you spending most of your time creating new visibility or are you spending some time actually connecting with people that are already in your world? Okay. This is where a lot of people get stuck. And I'll tell you a story while you're kind of thinking about this and maybe writing it down or drop it in the chat. My birthday was recently. Just so you know, my Facebook birthday is not my real birthday, but that's okay. But I did receive a whole lot of birthday messages and I could have just simply said thank you or ignored them. But guess what? I decided I was going to ask a question back to people who had sent me a message. And that then brought back some connections, right? A lot of them had just kind of fallen in the cracks because life happens and we have thousands of people, right, on different platforms. And it was interesting in several situations, not every single one. As we connected again, there was overlap that came up in our audience or our mission. And then that connection turned into a conversation, which then led to an invitation, right? And already, just from my birthday, there were podcast swaps and some other opportunities that have come up because there was time invested in the connection. It wasn't because I put up another post on my Facebook. It wasn't because I, did another story. It came because I actually connected with a human, right? I paid attention to the humans that I already had some connection with, even if they had kind of fallen away. And that's how momentum starts. So what are the things that you can do that are going to actually make connections with the right people, which then should lead to conversation, which is number 2. Okay. Conversation is where our relationship is built because we're turning that visibility into an actual relationship where I'm getting to know you and you're getting to know me. Right. And I'm coming with curiosity and asking questions. I love it. Visibility creates an awareness, but conversation is what creates that trust. And trust is what's going to move people to closer to working with you. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that women make is assuming that that momentum and that trust and that conversation is going to happen when we send the first message. How many of you, the first time they respond and it's a yes, and then no, most of the time it's not. Most of the time, momentum happens when those conversations are stewarded over time, right? And they're stewarded over time. They say the average person needs to have 12 to 17 interactions with you, and that number keeps going up. It used to be like seven before they say yes, right? And how most people are dropping the ball after the first or second touch when something hasn't moved somewhere. And we're missing out on, right? Those opportunities are actually there if we would just steward it. So as we're thinking about here in the conversations, I've given you some ideas here. I want you thinking about like, okay, what are opportunities that are maybe even in your inbox right now? Maybe messages that need a response or someone who commented on something. It's even maybe it's been a little while. Maybe you have to scroll back somewhere. But there probably have been people, if you've been in business for some period of time, there are people who have expressed an interest in what you do and a need, right? And that's the goal of this conversation for phase is that we're figuring out what is the need, what is the want, what is the gap that they have. Because we never want to move on to an invitation if they don't actually have a need, want, or a gap that we can help fill. And so I want you thinking about, okay, how can I start turning these connections into conversations? So some ideas, sending personal DMs, which I love. Somebody mentioned that, right? Like I can put the content up, but it's really when I start getting into conversations that way, sending a voice message. Maybe just I just did like an old-fashioned phone call with somebody yesterday. It was kind of nice not to be on Zoom and just have a conversation where you're just talking to somebody and, you didn't have to kind of worry about what was going on in the background or all the different things around. And it was a connection that we've had for several years. We both had some life stuff going on. And so we came back to this place of having a conversation around what God's doing right now and where we're growing next and where there might be some opportunities to work together, right? Sometimes the most fruitful thing you can do is to revisit a conversation from 2 or 3 days ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I just sent some messages to people from 2 or 3 years ago, right? Because momentum rarely happens in that one. Okay, so I want you right now saying, okay, when I look at historically, what has created momentum for me? What has actually created, what kind of conversations, what kind of activities and conversation have helped? Debbie's already on it. Or if you would consistently give it focus time, what would those maybe top three be for you? And our list should not look the same. Okay. It's going to be based on several things. Number one, the type of business you have. Number two, possibly even the season of business you're in, although I think the key things are always the key things. Like I call them like the timely things. They're not going to, expire once you reach a certain level. I think we still are always doing this in some capacity. Um, and then also your personality, right? Like what you might want to do may not be what feels comfortable for somebody else. So thinking on that, yeah, checking on past clients, that's a huge one. The most valuable assets that you have in your CRM are people who've already worked with you in some capacity, right? Especially if they had a great experience, and maybe for whatever reason it just wasn't working out for them timing wise or financially or whatever. So yes, I love that one. Reaching out to them, responding to engagement for sure, Debbie, right? Are we paying attention? And are we willing to go back to, some of those things, some of those places where people have interacted to have conversations, asking a leading question? Love it. We're really just relationship building. And here's the thing, though, we don't want to get stuck just in the weather, okay, or your summer plans and stay in the friend zone, but make sure that we're asking specific questions that are going to help identify, is there a need, a want, or a gap? Because if there's not, it's okay, right? This is where we're filtering. Not every connection is going to turn into a conversation. And then not every conversation is going to turn into an invitation. But if we're not investing time in those conversations, we're not going to get to the invitations. Okay, so I want you paying attention to what you might be avoiding. And like I said, I picked up it felt a little awkward to reach out to somebody. It literally had been 2 years. Guess what? They hadn't reached out in 2 years either. So we were able to pick up, where things were and see if it made sense for us to, stay connected right now. Okay, which then leads to number three, which is invitation, where we are offering someone a next step. Now, I know, here's the thing. Connection feels maybe safe. Conversation feels okay, comfortable, but invitation feels vulnerable because now there's the chance they could say no. But if we've actually done a good job of connecting with the right people, having conversations that identify the need, the gap, we've built up this trust and the fact that they're qualified, that there is some kind of interest level. Now, an invitation, yes, it may feel vulnerable. We're asking them to make a decision, but it's not pressure, it's service. Because if we've connected with someone who raised their hand and we've been in conversation with them and we understand that they have a need and truly believe we can help them, then withholding the invitation isn't humility, it's hesitation. And that's not good stewardship, right? An invitation simply says, based on what you've shared, here's the next step that would be helpful for you. Right? And it doesn't have to be, I give you some ideas here. It doesn't always have to be to your highest ticket offer. It might be inviting someone to a workshop. It might be inviting someone to a call. It might be inviting someone to your community or to follow you on a platform or to your podcast or to a lower ticket offer that you have or just into a next conversation. But invitation is going to create some movement because it's presenting them with a next step. So, as you're looking at some of the ideas here, what are some of the invitations that you can and should be making based on what it is that you're leading people to? I want you to jot down what would be your top three ROTI producing invitations. And again, not every invitation is going to be for everyone, but when you do have a connection with someone and you're having a conversation, at some point we want to move to an invitation, right? Have you ever been in a place where you've had a great conversation with someone and then nothing happened? Like there was no next step or no invitation or no movement. It was just a nice conversation. I mean, sometimes, that's okay, right? But I recently had this happen where I was actually on the other end. I was the consumer slash person who was raising my hand. I have a very clear need. I desire to see growth. I ran across someone's content on Instagram who speaks specifically to this in a way that I wasn't hearing anyone else anywhere else. So I've raised my hand on her content, on stories, on posts. I downloaded her freebie. I even purchased a digital product. And this is not me like shaming her in any way, shape, or form, but not once has she engaged me in conversation or invited me into a new program that I know she has coming out because she's talking about it. Now, I was the unicorn. I stuck around. I actually sent her a message saying I was interested and I wanted to learn more. And sadly, I'm still waiting for a response from her. Now, I did see a post where she said she's been really busy and hasn't gotten the course finished. But I thought, okay, how often do we do that? We avoid the invitation because I don't want to feel salesy or don't feel ready or I'm too busy and I'm just, hoping that all the automation stuff's going to take care of it. And so I'm being patient right now because I really do think she can help me with what I need. But I think a lot of people would have already gone on, right? So as you're looking at this invitation part, I want you thinking about, have you avoided some? Are there some invitations that you could be making right now? Because this is where your momentum is waiting. And so many people have connections, maybe even get into conversations, but then stop at that place, hoping hoping that person is just going to, do something on their own instead of actually making an invitation. So take a minute or two if you haven't already and jot down what would be your highest ROTI invitation activities. And again, it doesn't have to be to the final, ultimate way that, you can serve this person, but a next thing, a next step. How many of you are here because you and I we made a connection, we had some conversation, and then I made an invitation versus you just happened to see something on the internet. Some of you may have seen an email or something and then you clicked from there, but I generally find most people end up coming to workshops like this because there's been some kind of a direct connection, conversation, and invitation that happens. Okay, in a minute, we're going to diagnose where you are in your pathway right now and maybe where your momentum is falling apart. But I want you to notice something. And I mentioned this at the very beginning. We're not going to go a ton into here because this would be a whole other workshop. And maybe we will do one on this, but collaboration is your multiplier for the momentum pathway, right? Because instead of trying to build momentum entirely on your own, you can borrow trust and relationships and audiences and opportunities through partnerships. And collaboration accelerates every stage we just talked about. It creates more connections, which then creates more conversations, which then creates more opportunities for invitation. And that's why I love partnering with other women in business so much. And why, like I've intentionally built the Redeemer Time community where you can collaborate and talk about your business any day of the week. So if you're not a member of the Redeemer Time community, go to redeemhertime.com/community. Join us over there because you can talk about your business, look for opportunities, share opportunities. We actually did this last week. As a registrant for this workshop, you got invited to a special co-working session last week that was all about collaboration. And there were collaborations that happened in the room. And I even had a one-on-one with somebody yesterday who told me about some of the follow-up that's already come from one of the collaborations that she had just a week ago. So if you missed that, then make sure you join us next week. And this is why coming into a circle of other Christian women in business is so, so important in helping us to keep our momentum moving forward. Yeah. Okay. I love this, Carly. This is how many of you can relate to what Carly's sharing in the chat, right? We are told like build the automated sequences. In fact, okay, here's what you might notice. Even coming out of this workshop, it's not going to be a bazillion different emails that you're getting from me. You're going to get personal connection. In fact, in just a minute, we're going to build out your ROTI hour for tomorrow, and you're going to get personally connected to by me. It will not be a bot. It will not be an automated thing. It is going to be me, myself, and I that is reaching out to ask how that went and see either what happened or what got in the way. Do you think that's going to create more conversation and opportunities for invitation than just if I were to just push out some generic thing? Right? So it's not that it's bad to have some automation. I think, for sure, delivering, whatever the thing is into their hands needs to come that way. You'll all get an email later today that's going to be the same for everybody because everyone who registered needs to get this workshop replay. But then the way that I'm going to follow up is not just going to be the automated thing. And I hope that you see it, open it, read it, think about it, respond to it, right? But actually, where we're going to hopefully have some real conversation and an opportunity to make an invitation if CEO focus is something that's for you. So, yes, we don't want to do it at the cost of real connection. So, I love that you're saying that, Carly. Okay, so let's look at possibly where your momentum pathway is breaking down right now, because you may be wondering, okay, Lisa, I'm working hard. I'm not seeing a lot of the momentum that I want to be. So, it may not be because you're not putting enough time in, but it may be where you're putting your time. Okay, and sometimes what happens, we spend most of our time in one part of the pathway and neglect others, or not even in these three, right? We're still over here on the content part of things. For some of you, that's going to be connection. That's, I'm not actually connecting with new people. And when we're not connecting with new people, then we feel like how many feel like you're going in circles talking to the same people all the time? And you're like, why is nobody responding? Well, if it's the same 10, 15, 20, 30 people, right? So maybe that's where yours is breaking down. Maybe yours is breaking down in conversations that you do have new people coming into your world, but you're not actually engaging them in some way to uncover a need, want, desire gap that they have. Or maybe for you, it's the invitation piece. Maybe you are hearing and having conversations with people, but you're never taking it to that invitation place. You're just hoping they're going to see your email and click on it, or they're hoping they're going to see your post or your live or whatever it is that, you're talking about what that offer is, whether it's a paid or unpaid thing. So I want you to mark down right now, if you had to say which of these three places do you feel like your momentum pathway is breaking down, where momentum tends to stall, which one would it be? And check that box. Not what you think it should be, but actually what you think it is, what's actually happening. And sometimes the way we look at this is looking at how have opportunities actually moved forward and where have things stalled. Yes. Okay. So Katie and I have had this conversation. It's hard to have conversations when people don't respond to emails or SMS or social posts. Right. Okay. So number one, I would say, are the emails always automated emails or are they sometimes personal? Social posts, obviously, again, we're an algorithm only shows your stuff on a good day to 1 to 3% of your people. That's not very good odds, right? 97% chance they didn't even see it. So, so yeah, so one is, am I doing personal things versus just the mass things? But then the other thing I would go to, Katie, is maybe it's looking at the number of connections that we have, because sometimes it is a numbers thing, right? Again, if it's the same 5, 10, 15, fill in the blank people, it doesn't matter how many personal things I'm putting out there. And so it could be a volume thing and like, okay, maybe you need to focus on the connection piece and where can I get in front of some new people and make some new connections. And then also you can look at what am I actually asking? And I think that was something I encouraged you when you and I were coaching back and forth in some email. Like share with me a couple of the most recent things that you've asked, because it could just be that there's nothing wrong with it, but just it's not being asked in a way that makes it easy. We have to make it easy enough for them to answer that they're not going to have to overthink it, but also give enough, at least kind of give something of substance versus it just being easy. So yeah. Yeah. And we work on growing our list to expand our reach, right? So again, here's you're working on that connection piece. So that'd probably be the area you want to focus on there. Okay. And I want you to think about if this one area improved over the next 12 weeks, whichever one you just said, what would change? Would you have more clients or customers? Would you have more opportunities to be on podcasts or speaking on stages? Would you have more confidence? Would you have more revenue? Would you have more impact? And here's another great place to go 2 to 3 levels deep, like we did earlier on that why. Why would this matter if you really put some intentional time into this area? Instead of getting stuck, right? There are a lot of things that can block our momentum. Why would this matter? And here's what I want you to notice. As you're writing that down, as you're thinking about which one of these three, what difference would this make? You were able to kind of look at where momentum was leaking in just a couple minutes. Not because you need another strategy, but because you finally have like some buckets to put it in, right? And that's the power of clarity, right? Knowing where do I need to put my focus in order to create momentum. But it's not just the knowing, right? Now it's the doing. Here's the consistent action. And that's why I'm so passionate around what I do inside CEO Focus, is because we want to make sure that we're consistently investing time in these types of things, not just all the back end things that feel really nice. It's great to update your website. Great. But when was the time, when was the last time that a client or customer came simply from just because they came across your website? I think for a lot of us, we spend way too much time tweaking all the back end stuff and then missing out on actually what's going to bring somebody in. Okay. So here's what we want to do. Now that we know like what momentum needs to look like and maybe where it's leaking, let's figure out how you are going to intentionally invest this time starting tomorrow or even today, because there's still time. It's 2:03 my time. There's still time today. That's where it's actually going to start building momentum. You may or may not, have this turn into a client in the next 24 hours, but you should be like, okay, I can see how this is actually planting seeds towards that, because not every hour you spend working creates the same return. And so we want to build out what I call your ROTI hour, your return on time, and what are those high ROTI things that are going to create momentum. Okay. So turn to page 3, and we're going to build out the 1 hour tomorrow or today that matters most, right? Yes, you could go tweak those things. Yes, you could get to inbox 0. Yes, you could do all those things. But guess what? Is that really going to move your business forward? And yet that's where we spend so much of our time. What if you did this first? And we're actually going to talk about this in a minute. If you consistently put 1 hour a day, and when I say a day, I'm not talking 7 days a week. I'm talking at most 5 and probably at least 3. Okay, so 3 to 5 days a week. If you spent 1 focused hour working on connection, conversation, invitation activities, you would be building momentum towards that goal, towards that thing that you want to move forward. Okay, so let's talk about how to do that and how to create a plan. And then we'll talk about how to stay consistent with that plan. Okay, because we want to create that momentum. Okay, so as we look on here, I want you to remember the goal is not just to fill the hour with activity. We want to faithfully invest it, steward it, right, in what's going to create a good return. And now we've just kind of talked through what activities do create momentum. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to start with is your daily conversation check. We always want to start with what is coming in, where are people responding. That's always where we start first. Okay. And this can be one of the most important habits you build. Now, I know, right? You can get into your inbox, and like we said at the beginning, you could spend an hour in your inbox and then there went your hour, but it didn't really move anything forward. So I'm not saying go answer every single email that came in, but checking for ones that it's something that's ready to move to a next level. Yeah, great, Carly. We'll be sending the replay out right after we're done today. Okay, we want to be looking for not just creating new momentum, but checking for momentum already in progress, right? It's always going to take less effort, less time to keep the ball rolling than to try to pick up a new ball and get it going. Okay, and this one thing could be one of the most important habits that you build, because a lot of times we jump to new. I want new people, right? I want to find more. So we focus on the posting and the creating and all of that stuff, and there are opportunities in your inbox. So the first thing that you're going to do, and this should take no more than 5 to 10 minutes on a day where you have a lot of people coming in, you're just checking some of those places for where there is momentum building so that you can keep that ball going. Where are their replies waiting for responses? Where are their messages waiting for follow-up? Where are their comments waiting for engagement or conversations waiting to move forward? Right? I find oftentimes the greatest opportunity in our business may already be sitting in front of us. And so instead of chasing something new, we want to say, okay, what has God already put here? Because one reply to somebody like that is worth way more than spending an hour creating another piece of content. Okay, so your ROTI hour is always going to begin there, right, with what's going on, with what's fresh. So that may take you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but try not to let it go like this is not consuming all your time. Okay? All right. Then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, which part of the momentum pathway needs the most attention today? I'm not going to tell you. I know we all want like the cookie, we all want the list to tell me exactly what to do. And part of me was like, okay, I could teach them if you spend 20 minutes doing connecting and then 20 minutes of conversations and 20 minutes of invitations, that's the way to do it. And while that isn't a bad thing, like that could be a very good thing to do, it may not be what you exactly need. For example, right prior to this workshop yesterday, guess what? I was not making new connections. I did not spend time doing that. Why? Because in 24 hours, they probably weren't going to go from, I just found you on the internet to, oh, well, I'm going to show up to your workshop. So I spent time in conversations and invitations. People that I was already in conversation with had already told me something, right? People I had already invited to this. So I want you to know, like, it doesn't mean you have to hit all three every day, but we also want to be paying attention to what really needs some attention right now. Okay. Because if we're not making enough connections, we're not going to have the conversation and visit invitations. So all that to say, your roadie hour may have all three each day or most days. And there may be some days when it's really focused in on one specific one of these things. So it's not a, it has to look this the same way for all of us. Okay. So first thing, again, we just identified where your momentum, gap was on the last page. Okay. So that's probably what you're going to want to put some intentional focus on as you're executing your next one, whether that's today or whether that's tomorrow. So go ahead and mark that box. And if you feel like, you know what, I know I said, invitation yesterday, but really I haven't even had any conversations with people. I wouldn't even know who to invite. And then it would feel like it was coming out of left field. Then maybe you make a CEO decision and change to conversation right now. So just because you said it on the last page doesn't mean it still has to be there. Okay. So circle it, star it, whatever you want to do. Like I want to make sure I give some really intentional, it's not always the quantity of time, it's the quality of time into this area. Which part of the momentum pathway needs your attention most now? I would love if you guys drop that in the chat. I want to see where you're at. How many of you are on the connection place? How many of you are in the conversation place? How many of you are, I need to be working on invitations? I got plenty of people. I'm just not making invitations. I would just kind of love to see where you guys are, if there's any kind of a pattern. And guess what? There's no right answer because they're all right. They're all good. We need all of them. Couple connections, couple invitations. Those invitations will be so much easier to make if you've actually had some conversation and it's not just, a copy paste thing. So Katie, I would say when you're reaching out to somebody, how can you take something that they've shared with you and make it a part of what you're asking them? So it feels personalized versus, it feels like, and sometimes you don't know yet. And so then you're just asking a question out of curiosity in there. Okay. Yeah. Conversations that lead to invitations. Okay. Can I distinguish between connections and invitations? Yes. The connection is actually, we know each other exists, right? So Mickey has two different legs to her business. One, she does junk removal. And so if you live in the Raleigh area, connect with her. People live in the Raleigh area, give her a shout out. She also is working on a new offer to help people get more Google reviews. So if you have a business that you want to be found on Google, Google reviews are very, very helpful. So connection, Mickey, would be somebody knows, okay, Mickey is somebody, like I know who Mickey is and what she does now, right? So maybe somebody has opted in for one of your things, Mickey, or you meet them at a workshop or a networking event or something like that. The conversation is where there's some dialogue going back and forth, where you are leading the conversation, trying to uncover a need, want, gap, desire. And then invitation, Mickey, would be where if I've told you, yeah, I'm not popping up on Google searches, and you know that this Google search or this Google review thing would be helpful, then you're like, hey, Lissa, you remember how you were telling me, that this was what you were wanting to see happen in your business? Did you know that if you have more of reviews on Google, you will be showing up faster? I've actually got a program that shows you how to do that. Would you like me to share more about that? So now you're connecting me directly to an offer that you have. Or again, as I had some conversations with you guys, we are having conversations around what you're wanting to move forward this summer, right? You may have got an invitation to this workshop. So the invitation is actually to whatever that next step is or that offer that you have. Is that helpful? Okay, so we know where our focus is. Okay, and again, we're going to keep this so simple because here's the thing: complicated doesn't happen. How many of you, if you feel overwhelmed, you shut down and do nothing? Or you go over here and chase all the other things and call it a day. Right? So I'm like, I could have had you do like, okay, 10 things for each category. I'm like, guess what? Then she's not going to do any of them. So no, we're going to pick one thing from each category that you are going to do the next time that when you schedule this in just a minute, your next ROTI hour. So it is one connection action that you will take. Now, hopefully it's going to be, creating more than just one connection, but even if it is just one, that's better than none. So you can even go back to that list that we had in the last page, the things that you wrote down were your high ROTI connection activities. What is one connection activity or action, let's say, because those are activities, they're things we could do. Now, action is I am doing that you will take. Something measurable, something specific. For example, you might reach out to one podcast host. You might attend a networking event. You might send a collaboration request. Is the more specific you can make it, the better. What is one connection action that you will take when you sit down to do your ROTI hour? And if it feels too overwhelming because you're like, I don't even know, like I would have to do all these things to even make this happen, then don't write that down yet. Like I want this to be something you can actually take action on today or tomorrow that's going to help to bring in more connections into your world. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. I love that. Have at least one workshop, networking event, or coffee date followed up scheduled per week. I love that, right? So going, okay, what do I have coming up in the next week? And if I don't have something, how can I make sure I get something in my calendar? Maybe you're going to look for when are the networking events next week so that I can RSVP and put up my calendar so that way I'm making time for that. So it may not be the actual execution of it, but at least getting it in place could be a really, really good thing. Finish setting up my business email. Okay. Yeah, which hopefully then once it's set up, then we can actually be connecting with people to get them onto your email. Okay. Sometimes it's like the prep step that you're doing. Sometimes it is the actual step, but we want to spend less time getting ready to get ready and more time actually connecting, humanly connecting as possible. Okay, I post valuable content on my platforms for grandparents raising grandchildren. I love that, right? I've been thinking about who are a few grandparents that I know and asking them, hey, what platforms are you hanging out on? Having some conversation right around what you're doing. Okay, yeah, putting an ad out there can be helpful, right? And bringing some people in. I bet those collaboration opportunities are going to, be a great way to bring in some more connections. Okay, so at least one connection action. Okay, let's move on to your conversation action. What is one conversation action that you're going to take? It could be a specific person, it could be a group of people. So, say, for example, yesterday, knowing that the workshop was happening today, there's a specific group of people that I was reaching out in conversation to that I was prioritizing maybe over other conversations because of the fact that I knew this would be a good next step for them. So it could be a specific person. It could be like, hey, I know I have to reach out to Susie Q. Okay, so write Susie Q's name down. Or it could be like, I want to reach out to the people who have, fill in the blank. They've purchased my planner. They've, downloaded this freebie. They came to my last workshop, whatever that thing is. Think about a conversation that you want to move forward. Who needs a response or a follow-up? Yay, following up with people I met at networking events today. Yes, the sooner we can get on those while it's still fresh, the better, because most people don't follow up. Or most people don't follow up more than once, right? So maybe it's someone you've already followed up with, and maybe you haven't heard back from them, and you're like, hey, I really feel like this could be a conversation that moves forward. So maybe that's who gets written down. Who needs a next step? Sometimes it's not starting a conversation, sometimes it's stewarding a conversation. And I always say, as the business owner, we are the ones who take the responsibility to pick up the ball. Right. So I always have, like, even if I send, a question to someone or even make an invitation to something based on something we've talked about, I always have a plan for when am I going to reach out again if I haven't heard from them. Of course, if I hear from them, then they're going to pop up in that daily conversation check. All right. You guys ready for a little experiment right now? We're going to do something right now. Okay. Just decided this. Okay. For the next 2 minutes, we're not just going to write down a conversation. We're actually going to start it. Right now, we are going to send the message or reply to a DM or follow up on an email or check in with that past client or reach out to the person that God just put on your mind or Mickey, the person that you just met, the top person that you met today. I don't want you to overthink it. And maybe it's just, hey, it was just thinking about you and, wondered how XYZ is. Maybe it's not something direct to, again, we don't want to jump right to, it's not like first date, right? Where you jump to, will you marry me? What does that conversation need? So I'm going to challenge all of us right now. If you're watching the replay, push pause, take 2 minutes. Don't make it perfect. Don't overthink it. Just send something. Because the momentum isn't created just because we wrote down a follow up on a worksheet. It's actually created when we actually follow up. And I want us to actually start that right now. So take a minute, do that. And then once you've done it, I want you to did it in the chat. You may or may not hear back from them while we're still in the workshop in the last 2 minutes that we have together. Maybe you'll hear back from them later today. Maybe you'll hear from them tomorrow. Maybe you won't, but guess what? That's okay. You then are going to be intentional about coming back to that conversation instead of putting it off for days, weeks. Yeah, that's a great question, Debbie. Yeah, hey, I'm just curious. One of the questions I was asking people as I've had conversations leading up to this was, hey, I'm curious, what's a bigger challenge for you right now? Is it making time in the summertime to sit down and work on your business, or is it when you sit down, knowing what to focus your time on to actually move that thing forward? Right. So that gave me a lot of information. It helped me to see, are they just so distracted and feel like life is so out of, regular routine and rhythm that they're not even sitting down? Or is it they're sitting down, but their time is getting distracted in other things? Did it. Yay. Just one for now. Sure, you can do two, Mickey. If you've got time, go ahead and do a second one. That's great. But at least just one for now. I want you to be in like, I did that. I did that. And again, you may or may not see the fruit today, but you planted the seed, right? And that's how the growth happens. And I specifically had you do the conversation one only because that one can be, we don't have to overthink that part as much. The invitation action, sometimes this is where we get a little bit in our heads, but we're not going to do that. Okay. I want you to identify one invitation action that you are going to take when you do your ROTI hour. Yes, I know that sometimes it may be like, I feel like I'm selling something. Guess what? If you are in business, you are. Because when you sell something, it's how you get to serve somebody. Okay. You're just helping somebody take a next step that they're already on the journey. We're not forcing them, we're inviting them. Yay, saw another did it. We're not convincing them, we're inviting. So what is an invitation that you will make tomorrow? Maybe it is a specific person's name that you want to write down that this person could really use whatever this thing is. Or maybe it's a group of people. Okay, so it can be a specific person, it could be a group of people, but what is an invitation action that you will take tomorrow? Yeah, you followed up with somebody. I love it. And if you want to send the invitation right now, you are more than welcome to. But the reason I had us do the actual execution right away in the conversation was because I knew that was one that we're not going to overthink and get in our heads. I did it, invited two ladies to a 30-minute workshop. Oh, I love it. Did it, followed up with someone for a speaking opportunity. Okay. So often we're like, I don't have time. I'll do it later. Da, 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 right? Just do it. Done. It's an invitation to a resource. Yes, or to my upcoming 28-day challenge. I love it. And this is how we create more momentum, right? We are being intentional with making connections, having conversations, and then from a conversation, right, then being able to make an invitation. Yes, sometimes an invitation goes out to people that are just connections we don't know anything about, but those are probably going to go out more in the automated mass way versus the individual way, where I probably know something about what you need, want, or desire because you've raised your hand in some way. And so if I can connect it to that, then it's going to get your attention and hopefully there'll be a response there. And it has nothing to do with having more time. It has everything to do with focusing where we're putting our time. Okay, this last thing part I put in here is my momentum multiplier. I couldn't even get that out. Okay, here's where we talk about acceleration. Who could help accelerate your momentum? I want you to write down one person, probably a specific person, again, could be a category possibly, who already has relationships with the right people that you're looking to connect with. They already have connections. They already have maybe opportunities, a platform, an audience, experience. Who is one person or type of person who could help multiply what you're building? There was somebody who came last week to our collaborative co-working who is looking to work with local healthcare providers because what she does benefits the people that they serve, right? So she might not have a specific name, but she may say, this is the type of person I want to do a little bit of research on and reaching out to tomorrow that I know is in my area who does this. So who already has some relationships with people that you're trying to reach? And I always like to say, how can we make this a win-win? Right? How can we make this where, it's not just I'm asking something of them for them to help me, but maybe there's a way that you can help them. So write down a name, maybe two. And here's the power of not doing business alone, you guys, because in one introduction can change everything. I remember last week, this happened last week too. We were on this is why you should have been there. We had that collaborative co-working call. Somebody shared who they were looking to work with. In my head, I remember at the time thinking, I don't know anybody like that. And wouldn't you know, 30 minutes later, I was on a phone call with somebody else. And as soon as she started talking about what she did and where she was located, I was like, oh, boom. And guess what? Today, I saw them already exchanging in the email that I had sent to introduce them. So you never know, right? Sometimes it's just putting it out there and asking where people are going to come from. But I think collaboration is one of the most overlooked growth strategies. We're over here doing it on our own, right? And we don't have to. So who could help accelerate your momentum? Okay, make that a part of your ROTI hour. Okay, here's the thing. The women who create momentum don't just make a plan, they protect it. How many of us have had a really nice plan on paper and then life happened and it didn't happen? Right? This happens all the time because we didn't protect it from distraction, whether it's distractions in our heads, whether it's distractions around us. Because if you don't decide ahead of time what gets your attention and why it matters, everything and everyone else will decide for you. So here's what you're going to decide right now. Okay, right now, whatever time it is, wherever you are right now, it's 2:22 for those of us who are on live. What time will your ROTI hour happen tomorrow or today? I want you to write that down. So this is my ROTI hour will happen tomorrow at blank in blank. I had a really great conversation with somebody today. We did a one-on-one call, and she realized that when she is in a different location, she's really able to focus more and get more done. And so we came up with a way that like on a certain day, she is going to this location and this is the type of thing she's working on. Right. So think about where's that location for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you leave your house. In her case, it is because she knows in her house it's a three-ring circus. Anyone feel like it's a three-ring circus, especially in summertime? So maybe you go find a quiet, dark corner of your house, or maybe you go to a coffee shop. Or maybe it's just, no, when I show up, this is where I'm gonna be, and maybe I'm gonna close the door. We talked about she'd like I should put a sign. Although she did tell me that her dog can open her door even if it's locked. So the locked door would keep the kids out, but maybe not the dog. But anyway, okay. When will you do your next ROTI hour? I'm going to encourage you. Today is Wednesday. Every single one of you listening to me, whether you're on live or on the replay, you do have an hour between now and the end of the week on Friday. Okay. So don't say I don't have time this week unless you're on vacation and you've already decided I'm not doing any business. Then I will give you a pass. When will it happen and where? When will it happen and where? And then what will you not do? I put some of those things there that we started with on page 1. What are some of those distractions that you are intentionally going to say no to? Yes, you could check every single one, but I want you to think about the one or two that would be really tempting or most of the time would get some of your time versus actually working on the things we just laid out to build connection, conversation, invitation, which would be the top one or two for you in order to protect that time. Doesn't mean they're bad things to do. Just that hour is not the time to do that. Amazon deliveries. Yes, right. Even Amazon shopping, right? How many of you are like, they're working on something, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I gotta go look that up. And then we're on a rabbit trail. Yeah, over there. For an hour, guess what? Have a snack before you sit down, Debbie, right? And be like, okay, I'm not leaving this seat. Yes, okay, I love this, Katie. It's like, I will tell my family that I'm working. Yes, turn my devices on airplane mode. Yes. I love that. Okay. And you're going to focus on all three. Good. Right. And so again, in an hour's time, you can actually get quite a bit done. And if all you do is one thing in each category, and then you do that consistently tomorrow, and then Friday, and then Monday, and then Tuesday, when you come to our co-working session on Wednesday, you're going to be like, I am building momentum and I can see it because you know what's going to build the momentum. And now you're actually consistently giving it focused on. Oh, in the car driving to vacation. Good. As long as you're not the one in the driver's seat, Monique, then that will be a great time. That's a great way to use some car time. And that way, when you get to your destination, you can be fully focused on where you are. And I want you to think about who is going to benefit because you are showing up with intentionality and doing this. And this question really matters because it's not just about business growth, right? This is where stewardship makes it about the impact that we're making and how this is ultimately us stewarding well the gifts, the calling, the abilities that God has given us in order to make a difference for other people. People are waiting on the other side of your obedience, right? And we're not going to let time or distractions or I just got, busy doing this to get in the way because they can't benefit from what stays stuck inside our notebook or even on this great worksheet that we just worked on, right? They're only going to benefit when we take action. Oh, the library. That's a good idea. I love that, Jessica. Yeah, maybe you have a co-working space around you. I have a friend that every once in a while we'll get together for a co-working day. And so we just go to one of our houses and it just kind of helps us to not be in that mode where you're constantly doing other things. And you're just like, okay, for the next hour, this is what I'm focusing on, right? And then we get to work. So I love it. I love it. Okay. Then we've got this last question here at the bottom. And that is, if I consistently execute my ROTI hour for the next 12 weeks, what could be possible? Okay, because here is the thing. You may be able to execute this tomorrow, right? Because it's so fresh, or even today. But will you be doing it the next day? And will you be doing it next week? And will you be doing it next month? And will you be doing it, right, as we're heading into September? And that's really where the accountability piece comes in. So before we do that, before we talk about that, and I tell you guys a little bit more about CEO focus, I want us to answer this question. If you consistently invested your focus time inside a ROTI hour that is building momentum using connection, conversation, and invitation over the next 12 weeks, doesn't again have to mean every single day of the next 12 weeks, but the frequency that makes sense for you, so 3 to probably 5 times a week, what could become possible? Maybe even think back to the thing that you wrote on page 1, that thing that God put on your hearts that you want to move forward. What would happen if you faithfully invested 1 focused hour a day toward that result for the next 12 weeks? Yes, tomorrow. Yes, next week, but not just that. And we, how many of us, I talked to somebody, she was like, I find myself, I get to the 3-week mark and then I fall off. And that's actually really a lot. And most business owners don't get to the 3-week mark. Like we're off in the weeds by the 3-day mark, let alone 3 hours from now. So what happens if you do this for 12 weeks? What changes? What grows? What opportunities open up? What results, is happening? How many conversations do you have going? Right? Like today, I want you to take a couple minutes and dream a little bit. And I would love to hear if somebody's willing to unmute and just share real quick, like what would be possible if you were consistently executing an hour focused on these things, not perfectly, but intentionally over the next 12 weeks? What do you think would be possible? You can drop in the chat, or if one or two of you want to unmute and say it out loud. Maybe you're still in your head. Maybe you're still doubting, would that even be possible? Then spend some time with the Lord on that. Release some of those, thoughts, fears, and again, maybe it's been that you were not focusing on these things and that's why you weren't seeing the momentum. Or maybe you were focusing on these things, but you were stop, start again, right? That cycle. Or maybe it was, you were doing it, but you were like half in the room because your brain was something somewhere else. So what would happen if you actually had 1 hour of focus time? Especially in a season like summer, it doesn't have to require more time to build your business. It has to require consistent time that's focused on the right things that are going to build momentum. Yeah, I love that. I have the idea to ask other local business professionals to meet at the coffee shop for a co-working focus time session. Great, right? Not only will you get work done, you're also building into those relationships and having opportunities to talk about what you're working on and what you're building. And, there can be collaboration things there, can be connections, invitations. Maybe they need what you offer. Maybe, they know somebody who does. So that's a great strategy. I love that. I love that. All right, here's something I want you to think about before we wrap up. One final question. It's not necessarily written here, but I want you to look at the ROTI hour you just built here on page 3. What is most likely to prevent you from consistently following through on this for the next 12 weeks? And I would love to hear this in the chat. What is most likely to prevent you from consistently following through on this over the next 12 weeks? Whatever they hold. And yes, it is summer. So whether you have kids at home or not, whether you have grandkids or school-age kids or college kids, or you're single or you're married or whatever, there's just something about summer, right? That we just want to be outside or away or whatever the thing is. So what is most likely to prevent you from consistently following through over the next 12 weeks? Could it be that you start strong and then you lose focus? Myself. Okay. Not making it a priority. Yes, okay, this is huge, Debbie. I love that you said this. I need to put this time on my calendar just like an appointment that I would never cancel, like the doctor or dentist. So true, right? And what happens if something does come up and you have a doctor or dentist appointment? You don't just say, well, I'm just not going to go. You just reschedule, right? So what if we actually did that as business owners? What if, now for me, my ROTI hour is from 9 to 10 a.m. every morning because I'm in my office usually by like 8:30, 8:45, kind of, getting into a few of the, what does this day hold, things like that. My first hour is spent on doing these 3 things that are moving momentum. And again, guess what? Then there's time for everything else. I find for me, if I try to do it later in the day, it's way too easy for it to get pushed off because life happens, or I'm distracted, or I'm now in decision fatigue, or I'm, shiny object, or whatever it is. So that's how I do it. I make it a part of mine, and I make it so that nobody can schedule a call during that time. It is an appointment on my calendar. Now, as a CEO, you always get to decide, right? If something comes up, for example, this morning, I was able to get in to get the nails that my friend did for my daughter's wedding off. And today was the day that she had. And I was like, okay, I will be there. And so it shifted, right? But that's me making a CEO decision, not everybody else deciding for me. Okay. And yeah, it may not have happened at that time today. And then today I'm more focused on the workshop and then what's going to come out after this. But guess what? I already have a rhythm that I go right back to tomorrow. Okay. So how do you start building that? Getting distracted during the hour. Okay. So think about what are those distractions, Mickey? How can I minimize them? Are they digital? What things do I need to turn off or not even have, around? Are they other people? What conversations do I need to have? Are they, just things that get in my head? How do I take those thoughts captive? Or if I do come up with the idea for dinner, how do I capture it so I don't have to execute on it, in the middle of my ROTI hours? So I would pay attention to the patterns of that, not knowing who to connect with. Okay. So that's probably going to be like when you're thinking about who to have a conversation with, right? So that connection then is that's maybe why I think, Katie, you focusing on the connection piece, which is bringing in new people. So thinking about where are the people who need what you have to offer? Where are they hanging out? Where are they having conversations? Where are they showing up? How can I, show up in a meaningful way? So maybe you're going into, a group. Maybe you're going to an in-person type thing. Maybe it's something online. Maybe you know somebody who's got a group of people that they work with that also could need or want what it is that you offer. And so how can you add some value for their community, their audience, their platform? So yeah, I think then that will help you have people who've already raised their hand. Because yeah, when nobody's raising their hand, then, but there may be people that Katie, sometimes too, it starts from the people that you already know and saying, hey, we've worked together in the past on this. I'm looking for people who XYZ get really specific. Who do you know that might, want this or be interested in this? Sometimes it does come from asking. Yeah, look at that. I've already heard back from one person I met at networking. Yay! We had some momentum, we had some fruit already built. And don't feel bad if you didn't get a response, right? Our part is putting it out there, not always the response, on that. Right? And this is why we have to identify what matters, when am I giving it time, and how am I going to keep these distractions at bay? Because this is what's going to keep momentum moving forward, right? It's not always the knowing what to do, although hopefully you were really made more aware that maybe haven't been given as much focused time to this, but now it's like, how do I stay consistent with this? And that is where accountability comes in. And I just want to share a story real quick of one of the gals inside CEO Focus. Her name is Donita. So if you're in CEO Focus, you know who I'm talking about. She has a lot of things competing for her attention. She has a lot of health challenges. She has a homestead. She has a part-time job. She has kids. She has grandkids. She has a business. She also is one of my interns. Like she has a lot of things that she's doing. And what I love that she has shared with me is that instead of trying to do everything perfectly, she's built in rhythms. And every Monday she shows up to our weekly accountability meeting. We take time to get grounded in truth. We start with scripture. We review the previous week, right? What was my focus? How aligned was I with that? What things tended to distracted me? What fruit did I see from the way I did invest my time? Then we create our plan for this week, right? What does matter, right? Where am I focusing time? How am I making time for it? How am I protecting that time? And then we share for accountability and we pray over our week together, right? And then on Wednesdays, we have our CEO co-working and she shows up for co-working and she brings what she knows is going to help move her business forward. And she knows I have this dedicated hour every Wednesday, right, to do that. So even if somehow some momentum fell off between Monday and Wednesday, right, in between on Tuesday, Wednesday picks her right back up, right, and helps her to keep that momentum going through with the rest of the week. And she's intentionally investing time and connection and conversation and invitations week after week, not perfectly, but consistently. And because of that, she's seeing more engagement and she's having more conversations and more people are showing up to the things that she's doing and she's building more momentum, right? Because she has a place to reset and refocus and keep her moving forward, right? So if that is something that you're like, hey, I know that left to myself, I tend to quietly quit, cut corners, never even start. Hello, right? Like I could have a plan, but never actually do that. I'm going to drop the link to check out CEO Focus in the chat. Oops, I hate when it does that. Let me see if I can make this. Okay, I did hyperlink it. Okay, because that's what we do. Okay, we decide on the one thing you're committed to moving forward. What I like to do is think in 12-week chunks, not just week by week. But then what we do is we break it down into a simple 12-week growth map so that you always know what's the next piece that I'm working towards. And then we build rhythms around that to protect not only that time, but also our focus so that those urgent things don't crowd it out, so that, the important things actually get our time and focus. And we use the weekly accountability and planning and the co-working so that we keep our momentum building, so that we keep implementing. And guess what? There are times when we show up and we're like, last week was a week, right? Or yesterday happened. But when you've got something to kind of bring you back, keep you from drifting, I call them those anchors, right? It keeps us then moving in the direction that we want to go. And that's where the coaching, the community, the networking, collaboration opportunities, all those things help accelerate our growth because let's be honest, momentum is way easier to create when we're together, right? Versus alone. So here's what I want to ask you as we're ending up today. Look at the plan you just created, right? Page 3, you have a plan. Do you know what to do tomorrow? Say yes in the chat if you're like, yes. I know I've already decided, made a CEO decision around what I'm doing. I made a CEO decision around when I'm doing this, even where I'm doing this. We started thinking about how I'm going to protect that time, right? What distractions you can try to eliminate in advance. Okay. So the question is going to be, are you going to do it tomorrow? And then not just that, will you be doing it next week and 3 weeks from now and 6 weeks from now and 12 weeks from now? Okay. Remember when I had you send that message a few minutes ago? Most of you didn't. That wasn't because it was some new strategy. You just needed a moment of accountability. You need somebody to say, do it now. Stop saying you don't have time. Stop saying you'll get to it later. Stop saying, I would if. Like CEOs show up and we say, okay, here's what I need to do. Right. And that's what we're doing over inside CEO Focus week after week. And it doesn't matter if it's summertime, because guess what? What's going to happen come fall? We're going to be into the holidays, and life is just always going to be distracting and busy. And that's why we need things that are going to anchor us to what we say matters and what it is that we want to do. And the goal from coming out today was not just to complete page 3 one time and say, okay, I did it. I want you to build a rhythm. Okay. Because your momentum isn't going to be created by just one good focused hour of time. That will help. It's going to be created when you faithfully invest the right hour over and over and over again, week after week. And that's what we're doing inside CEO Focus. Because when we review what happened last week and we decide what matters this week, we share what's distracting or our struggles are. Sometimes there's some masterminding, brainstorming, coaching that comes in, right, to help us think through how can I approach this or address this differently, right? That's how we build momentum. And that's how we then see the growth happening week after week after week. And what I'm going to do, if you're like, okay, I want support around creating momentum, I need accountability following through, I love being a part of a community of people doing this too, then definitely come and check it out. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about it. It's $97 a month, so super, super easy. And when you join us by Sunday, then I'm including a personalized ROTI Hour review. We're going to take the plan you created today. I'm going to help really dial in which of those 3 categories you really need to put some more intentional focus in right now. And based on your current season of business, let's look at what are the highest ROTI activities for you that are going to help you create the greatest return, and how you can stay consistent and focused when you are investing time in that so that you will see the growth. All right. And this is not a cookie cutter, copy paste, everybody's look the same, which is why I want to give a personalized ROTI Hour review, because yours may look different than mine, which may look different from the next person. Okay. But everybody should be investing time in this way. Okay. So if that's something of interest to you, drop that in there. I love that. My goal is to do it Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Good. Okay. So put that on your calendar. And then here's a great way to show up to CEO Focus to get that accountability around it. Right. The other thing that I'm doing as an extra workshop bonus, I mentioned this earlier, everyone who registered is invited to join us next Wednesday, June 24th at 10 a.m. Central, where we are doing our next ROTI Hour co-working session. Okay, so it's an hour. It's not Lisa talking to you. It is literally, we come in, what are my high ROTI activities I'm working on today? And we execute and we share our wins at the end. Okay, but it's like adult study hall, I call it. When you're sitting in the study hall room, you study because everybody around you is. What else are you going to do, right? So come and join us just as my thank you for being part of this workshop. And that if you want to have that every Wednesday of the summer, then that would be something that you get when you come into CEO Focus. So, all right, before we're checking out today, I would love to hear in the chat, what was an aha for you today? Or what was a decision that you made today? Either something that you learned, realized, discovered, or something that you decided that is going to make a difference when you think about creating momentum for that thing. So you drop it in the chat. I love hearing, or feel free to unmute. Let me unpin myself so that way don't just see me. There we go. If anyone wants to share, I love hearing those things. It helps solidify it for you. Decision, put it on the calendar. Good. Yes, when to do it during the week so I can make connections. I love it. Yeah, when you put it on the calendar, right, then your brain is seeing it and it's not this like, oh, I should be doing that. Oh, I need to get to that. I've already set aside time for it, right? You've already made that decision. Now it's going to be, okay, who am I reaching out to? And that's where you can even print this out each day if you want, or just kind of use this format and say, okay, what are the things I'm doing today to organize yourself before that hour starts? So that way you can really maximize that. Good. Anybody else a win? Getting more intentional with 1 hour a day? Good. Yeah, 1 hour a day, really, right? And we think about, how much time we spend in our business, and it's on all these other things, which are good things, but they're not always what's moving the thing. So what if you gave 1 hour, your first hour, or at least an intentional hour to this? Good. In the buckets. Good. And that way you can think, Mickey, as you're coming across people, oh, wow, this person fits in this bucket. And you may even want to have like a running list, right? So that way as you're working through things, you're like, okay, I'm moving this person to this bucket. So that way when I come into my next ROTI hour, I'm not wondering who am I having a conversation with or invitation. They're already there. So love it. Good idea. All right. Well, I hope this is helpful for you guys. Now we get to go do it. Okay. So you will be hearing from me, like it or not, in the next 48 hours. I'll give it to a Friday. Okay. And again, when I ask you, did you do your ROTI hour? Do not feel bad if the answer is no, I didn't. It's okay. I'm going to ask you then to tell me what got in the way, because I guarantee every single person can find an hour in the next 48 hours. Okay. If you do it, then I'm going to ask you what happened? It may have been something that happened where you got a response like Mickey did already today, or it may just be something that happened inside here where you showed up and did the thing you said you were going to do, and that just built confidence for the next time. Okay. So either way, it's going to be a good return on time invested, and I can't wait to hear. So, all right. Well, I will get this replay out. If you want to come back through it and stuff as well, then it'll be available for those of you guys who registered. If you know somebody who really could benefit from this, I will leave the registration link open. And then once I get it set up in the back end, it will automatically send them the replay as well. So that can be a way that you're helping me to help more people to make better use of their time and see some results this summer. So you're welcome, Debbie. Glad you're here to join us. And I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Bye-bye.